perhaps lost our way a bit in the Romantic era. We have lots of amazing orchestral music to play from that time, but not too many concertos. We don't have a Brahms concerto or even a Mozart concerto or many Strauss concerto. And many composers, unfortunately, neglected the trombone at that point. But it's come into its own again, I think, for contemporary music. So the music of Basta is really well written. The first section is largely in one style, and it's this very snappy style, a bit impatient style. The word Basta means enough, and that implies a certain impatience, I think. The first section is a lot of this slightly unhappy, short, snappy stuff. Every now and again there's these long pedal notes which imply that this character, if it's a person, maybe just stops and pauses for breath every now and again. And then is off. The second section is this Scallic music where Folke Rabe gets the trombone to push the slide out while the notes are going up and the slide in while the notes are going down. Obviously, normally if you extend the slide, you're going down, you get a glissando. But if you go up the harmonics while pushing the slide out, you can create these scales. Then we reach the third section, which has got these multiphonics, and it says on the part, threatening. And this, to me, implies that the characters of the first and second section, which are quite different in nature, are trying to work something out. This is feels to me like a bit of a domestic argument brewing here. So that maybe is threatening, but the music is trying very hard to resolve itself there and not quite managing it. And in the end, we come out of this section and all the elements of the first three sections appear almost on top of each other in very rapid succession. You get bits from the previous three sections. And this to me is sort of explosion and argument, and everybody's throwing their comments in. Sequenza, number 5 for trombone. He wrote a whole series of sequenzas for various instruments, and we were lucky enough to have one for the trombone. Sequenza means sequence, and there's a point a little way into this piece where we hear the sequence of notes. And that is formed from the music from the start of the piece. Gradually we hear those notes creeping up in the music. So the music starts with just singular notes. And those notes eventually come together and we reach this point of critical moment, and Berio asks us to flutter tongue over it, and then we play the sequence again, very separate notes, and then the sequence breaks down and becomes fragmented. Also, what you'll hear in that first section are these vowel sounds, and they're notated on the part as U, A, I, U, A, E. And if you say U, A, E close together and join them up, Y, 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 you basically get to the word Y.
Why?
Berio gives us a little idea about what this piece is about. He had a neighbour when he lived in Italy called Grock, and he didn't know what Mr. Grock did. As a boy, he used to climb over his wall and steal his oranges. And then as he grew up, he became curious about this chap. And his stage name was Grock, and he was a clown. And so Berio, unlike the other sequenzas, Berio gives us an idea of what the trombone sequenza is about. And we're asked to dress up and put on some makeup and turn ourselves into a clown and do a little bit of acting. And it's difficult to know exactly what the story of the clown is, but we're sort of led to believe from the music that the clown is actually really struggling with life, and he starts off the sequenza by performing as a clown, and he reaches this moment where we hear the sequenza where it all comes together and also falls apart immediately, and we're led to believe that this clown perhaps has a bit of a breakdown. Both Folke Rabe in Basta and Berio in the sequenza get the trombonist to play multiphonics, where we're playing a note in the normal way by buzzing the lips, but also singing. But the composers do it in a different way. In Basta, you hear the intervals between the playing and the singing to be quite resonant, quite wide intervals. But in Berio's sequenza, he gets the performer to play and sing very, very, very close together, a semitone and a tone. So what you get there is the two sounds, but you also get another buzzing, another vibrating sound, which is the difference between the frequencies of the two notes, the sung note and the played note. So you get another effect coming in there. Most brass players can double and triple tongue, and this is when we basically can play notes faster than a single tongue, the normal speed of the tongue will allow us. And that requires us to go ta-ka-ta, ta-ta-ka. So double tonguing would be triple tonguing. And there's little sections in this piece where Berio gets us also to use this mute and mix up the double and triple tonguing. So that's the opening of Cheryl Frances-Hoad McQueen sketches. And what we've got there are quarter tones, a little bit of quarter tone, which on the trombone, actually, we are quite lucky. We can just move the slide in between the notches and find a quarter tone, unlike woodwind instruments, which have to find alternative fingerings. Later on in this piece, only a couple of lines down, she gets us doing tongue slaps, which is where you ram the tongue forward in between the teeth and stop the air before the lips have vibrated. And Cheryl uses that quite a bit in this first movement. Cheryl Frances-Hoad in her McQueen sketches wrote for this mute, the bucket mute, and this really muffles the sound. So in orchestral music, if a composer writes mute for a brass instrument, we generally put this mute in, a straight mute. Particularly in contemporary music, in a smaller group, so the trombone's not so dominant, it brings the volume of the trombone down to a point where you can perhaps more easily balance with woodwinds and strings. We add a little cup to the end of that, we can produce this mute, which is called a cup mute, and it's a different character. It sounds softer, a bit mellower. Next, we've got a Harmon mute. That's a Harmon mute, sometimes called a wah-wah mute. And it's got this insert that we could pull out, or if we leave it in, we can put our hand over the end and create wah-wah effects. Berio really set the bar very high with the Sequenza written in the 60s. And since then, many composers really take interest in the trombone and maybe make a connection with a trombone player and really discover an awful lot of things that you can do on the trombone, many effects. And I think it's, people write very varied solo pieces for the trombone now.